Well, we warned people about it for years before the election, and yet people decided that it either wasn't a big deal, they didn't believe that Trump knew about it or considered it a objective of his, or they outright supported it. And now, Project 2025 is on the horizon. But I think we all knew that. It's been happening all around us. We've been covering the headlines, and we're sort of sinking deeper into the process with each passing day. And things are getting bad. Obviously, we've seen mass layoffs of federal employees, cuts to spending on things such as cancer research, and many other equally valuable things. And now, well, the economy's not in the best place. And Trump keeps saying, hey, just hold on, the economy will get better. I'm not even talking about the markets, which are just kind of freaking the fuck out. I mean, people can still benefit off of the state of the markets going up and down if they're smart about it. I'm talking about the US economy literally shrinking, our GDP dropping. Economic experts saying that we should be panicking right now because there is no end in sight to what's happening right now. To leave MAGA, I feel betrayed. We've got a person who supports Trump in chat, but like, it's less so that you've been betrayed, and more so that Trump said what he was going to do and kind of omitted what the outcome would be, and made you believe the outcome would be positive because of the suggestion that what he's going after, it's like a lie by omission. Trump's a liar, don't get me wrong, he's a liar, but he's actually a really good liar. At least, like, you know, if you're the average person, you're probably not going to be, like, looking for the signs that he's being untruthful, because you're used to how politicians lie. And politicians tend, and Trump is a politician, but you know what I mean. Politicians lie in a friendly way. They soften language and they act politically correct, but Trump is very boisterous and over the top, and he acts real, you know? It's like, yeah, he's real talking. He doesn't, like, bullshit people, right? But the fact is, he is bullshitting people. He's just doing it more in that way that, you know, that one dude at the trailer park does. Less so than what your average Harvard-educated politician does. And so I think a lot of people were thinking Trump was an outsider who actually had their best interests in mind because his bullshitting was so unorthodox compared to your average politician's bullshitting. And, you know, he made very hopeful promises, and sadly, you know, here we are now. Legal actually did a really good video going over the plans for Project 2025 and what we can expect. Obviously, some people on the right are going to be happy about a lot of these policies, but I think for the most part, left and right and center, a lot of these things are going to be questionable at best in the eyes of most Americans. So it's worth going over and seeing what we have to look forward to. Let's check it out.
Turns out that when the Trump campaign said they had no idea what
Sorry for the volume blast. I'm so sorry.
Project 2025 was and had absolutely no plans to implement the wildly unpopular plan, they were lying. I mean, you obviously knew that. It was pretty obvious that since the people that wrote Project 2025 were mostly former Trump administration people, and many of those same people were slated to return to government if Trump was reelected, I mean, you'd have to be a credulous idiot to think that they wouldn't implement Project 2025. But it turns out that the legacy media is full of credulous idiots, and it's been Project 2025 all the way down since Trump came back to the Oval Office. Now look, I would never tell you that we told you so Liz Dye is going to tell you how hard we told you so.
I really do think that something the left needs to start doing, and I kind of used to resent this for a while, but now I'm starting to warm up to it more, is criticizing and generally being hostile towards mainstream media as a concept, at least left-wing mainstream media, you know, your CNNs, your MSNBCs, because they really did drop the ball when it came to Trump. And I'm not just talking about just how much they talked about Trump. I mean the way that they did. For over 8 years, Donald Trump has used the same strategy and same pattern of methodology to say something insane to distract the media, get it talking about something empty and pointless that would get people to pay attention for a second, but then overall realize it's quite meaningless and this is not anything all that serious to be concerned over. And if this is all people are upset about Trump over, then, you know, it must be derangement, Trump derangement syndrome even. All the while, Donald Trump uses the distraction to pull off some insane bullshit. He's done it many, many times, and we know what the method is even called because Steve Bannon described this exact strategy almost verbatim. He calls it the flooding the zone strategy. And unfortunately, you know, I can't fault the media for falling for it for maybe a year, you know, like just kind of taking the bait and failing to do a really good job of actually hammering in on Trump's weakest points and making sure the people are informed about them. I can't fault them for maybe falling for it for like a year. There was a deliberate attempt to sort of overwhelm mainstream media from the Trump campaign, notably with Bannon leading that, right? However, after like 6 or 8 years, I mean, come the fuck on. How did mainstream media not figure out what was going on and how best to try and hold Trump's feet to the fire? How are they and how were they still letting Trump slide on such blatant things like his apparent non-association with Project 2025, a plan which exists in a binder with a logo on it that there are 100 photos of Trump standing in front of at speaking engagements? It's like, I don't know. I'm not going to crash out and keep my shit together.
Thanks, Devin. Last summer, we made a whole video on Project 2025. It seemed to us like something America definitely should not do. But then...
El Presidente.
Donald Trump has been president now for 3 months, and he is well on his way to implementing the Project 2025 agenda, which is weird because on the campaign trail, he said he had nothing to do with it.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it.
Project 20.
I never forget that in that same debate, he said, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. They were not, in fact, eating the dogs or the cats, but that clip is hysterical to this day, and we should never forget that. Listen, there is a bright side to all bad things, and one of the bright sides of Trump's election, and just that, all of that, is that they ate the dogs, they ate the cats, they're eating the bats, and they're eating the rats. Bars.
025? Never heard of it. Then, Trump sent a whole passel of surrogates over to Politico to pinky swear that everyone from Project 2025 was barred from a future Trump administration. Supposedly, Don Jr. was leading the effort to assemble names of banned staffers. In October, Finance CEO Howard Lutnick, who was leading Trump's transition team, told the New York Post that no one associated with Project 2025 would have a job in the future Trump administration, as in none, zero, radioactive, so that's a clear position. Today, the Trump administration...
That's surprising. That's a lot of public disassociation from Project 2025 for something that Trump doesn't even know about or seem to care about based on what he was saying.
...is full of people associated with Project 2025, and Lutnick is Secretary of Commerce. Also, the administration is going pedal to the metal to implement Project 2025's policy goals. So let's check back in and see how much of what we predicted has come to pass and what we can expect going forward. These guys really, really hate immigrants and pronouns, and they love
Oh my
local
God,
control.
I feel so old.
Well, unless the locality wants to let women control their...
Isn't it crazy how, like, literally a year ago, this is what video looked like? It's wild how much we've progressed, isn't it?
own bodies, or treat undocumented immigrants like human beings, or be nice to gay and trans kids. Also, they're really mad about porn. Well, hide me from July. Checks out.
And they've been banning it.
The most important piece of Project 2025 by far was the plan for the president to seize spending power from Congress, sometimes called impoundment. The Constitution says very clearly that Congress shall have the power to provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, and no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Another word for appropriations is the budget, which Congress passes for the president to sign, and the federal agencies spend the money as allocated.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill.
Other presidents have refused to spend money
Just a
allocated by
second more.
Congress, and the
Nah, if they played any more, I'd probably get copyrighted too. Hey, Noct, how you doing? Yeah, so for those that don't know, Biden had allocated immense amounts of money from the U.S. budget to a bunch of programs that were immensely beneficial to the American people. One of the most lauded, despite the fact that Biden rarely got credit for his accomplishments, was the infrastructure spending bill. Basically, the U.S. has had a big problem for many decades at this point. I mean, technically, you could argue since like the 80s with infrastructure. Like, you can go back to like the 80s, and really since then, a lot of America's cities and towns have broken sidewalks and like areas that have just kind of like fallen apart unless there's been like a city-wide or private desire to fix them up. And this means that lower income areas without as many businesses or high traffic like wealthy individuals end up falling into disrepair and ruin. And this has been an ongoing problem for decades in America, something that a lot of people have complained about, and, you know, rightfully so. Biden allocated the most federal spending ever to fixing our infrastructure. So these are like your public roads and stuff. And obviously a lot of this money is also going to go to highway construction. You've always got like tons of people working on building and expanding our highway system in America and building roads. And so this is just going to be like something that allows for more people to get hired on to that job and do that work, which is the kind of work you really want if you're in an economy that's struggling. If the economy is struggling, you probably have a lot of people weighing down the lower end of financial like success. That is to say, not like weighing it down as in like they're a burden, but literally weighing down the stats. And so if you're trying to eliminate problems like that, you try to provide jobs to people with less education, people who may not have even graduated high school. And not in every position, but for the most part, you can be a felon and still work on the road. You know, you can still build roads as a felon. So like, these are jobs that are going to be valuable to the people who need these jobs the most in America. Trump has just been axing all of that allocated funding, and of course that was part of Project 2025. As much of what Biden accomplished that Trump can destroy as possible, he is destroying.
Supreme Court said, no, that's not how any of this goes. In 1975, the Supreme Court told Richard Nixon that he absolutely had to spend money allocated by Congress under the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, even if he super duper didn't want to, which he didn't. In 1998, the court invalidated the Line Item Veto Act, which would have allowed President Clinton to cross out parts of the budget that he didn't like. But the mastermind of Project...
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I can't quite hit his intonation, but I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Now he really like draws it out. How's it? Sexual relations with that woman. One day I gotta practice that in the mirror and re-listen to it over and over again, and I'll hit it one day.
2025 is a guy named Russ Vought, and his big idea is that maybe SCOTUS was kidding. Maybe the Constitution says that the president...
Yes. Yeah, his name is Vought. This guy who you could argue is one of the masterminds behind this era of right-wing cultural domination and political domination. His last name is literally Vought.
The president really can refuse to spend money allocated by Congress, and so Trump should put political appointees in charge of the Office of Management and Budget instead of neutral bean counters so they can direct the amount, duration, and purpose of any apportioned funding to ensure against waste, fraud, and abuse, and ensure consistency with the president's agenda and applicable laws. That last part about consistency with the president's agenda is the key. See, Vought wants the people holding the federal checkbook to be aggressive in wielding the tool on behalf of the president's agenda and willing to defend the power against attacks from Congress. And
dude, isn't it crazy how we're already experiencing season 5 of The Boys? You know, I thought we were gonna have to wait another year, but it looks like we're just getting to experience season 5 early. Isn't that cool? Dude, season 5 of The Boys, okay. Either season 5 of The Boys will get so crazy that it predicts the future, or it'll be so grounded compared to what's happening in real life, it'll almost look like a fantasy. At what point does The Boys world start to be preferable to ours politically? Because we're approaching that right now, and it's kind of scary.
That's exactly what happened. Russ Vought got put in charge of the Office of Management and Budget, and from the day he was inaugurated, Trump said he's just not going to spend money in the federal budget. And that is the necessary precondition for enacting the entire Project 2025 agenda. First, they defund social programs across the board, which sounds like crazy hyperbole, but these are people who refer to humanitarian aid as an immiserating feature of the global landscape. They want to turn management of Social Security over to private companies.
I've heard many conservatives say the words, I shit you not verbatim, the words, the sin of empathy.
And they want to abolish Head Start, the program which provides early childhood education for hundreds of thousands of poor kids. And two, once the president has seized control of the federal budget, the Project 2025 guys want him to use those tax dollars that you and I and everyone else has paid to enact social policy without having to pass laws. So the president can say no education funds for states that allow trans kids to play soccer on their school teams, or he can tell universities that they'll...
You know what policy is in Project 2025 that he has not instituted yet, but when he does, it's going to be like actually the end of America. Like it's actually over if he does this. Trump has promised in his campaign that if he wins, he will institute a federal law that says if any school requires students get vaccinated to attend, they will lose all public funding. Literally meaning the school will have to shut down. They'll have no more money. Trump, if he follows through on this, is literally going to make every school an anti-vax school or no longer a school. When that happens, the outbreaks are going to be insane. The deaths might tally well into the tens of millions from disease. Like, we're talking polio, measles, obviously measles, mumps, rubella. Like, for all we know, Spanish flu. It's going to come back. Tuberculosis. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We're going to be, like, dying on top of a mountain looking off to the east, listening to May I Stand Unshaken. It's going to be like Arthur Morgan. It's going to be super sad. Ebola. There's going to be Ebola everywhere, bro. Bubonic plague. Dude, we're going to be breasting boobily with the bubonic plague. Yeah, every other American is going to have the nickname Black Lung. You know, it's going to be rough out here. Sorry, Noct. Sorry you had to log into the American server by watching my stream. Try not to get sick.
They'll lose all federal subsidies if they let students exercise their First Amendment right to protest, or he can threaten to penalize law firms that represent clients he doesn't like. And hey, guess what? He already has. Yeah, those are things that Trump has done since taking office, and it's all thanks to Project 2025, which told him that the key to everything else was impoundment. Okay, so that's the how. Now for the what, because Project 2025 had a whole lot of government cuts on its wish list. First off,
and that's kind of where they've started.
Let's talk about the State Department. According to the Project 2025 manifesto, upon inauguration, the Secretary of State should order an immediate freeze on allocation of resources, foreign assistance disbursements, domestic and international contracts and payments, hiring and recruiting decisions, etc., pending a political appointee-driven review to ensure that such efforts comport with the new administration's policies. And so, on his first day in office, Trump signed an executive order instituting a 90-day pause in United States foreign development assistance, pending reviews of such programs for programmatic efficiency and consistency with United States foreign policy. And he said that the Office of Management and Budget shall enforce this pause through its apportionment authority, i.e., the federal checkbook. That is all Project 2025, and it's exactly...
Trump is going to have unilateral control over federal spending. Money will go wherever the fuck he wants it to. That's not normal for the president. The president's not supposed to be able to do that. Not without, I think it's the approval of Congress, if I'm not mistaken. Trump is trying to put that power entirely under the executive.
What happened? The State Department paused all foreign aid. Then the administration set about shutting down whole agencies established by Congress and funded under the federal budget, which is, say it with us now, a law. Most notably, the government shuttered USAID, the largest humanitarian aid agency in the world. Elon Musk called USAID a giant money laundering operation and bragged on Twitter that he spent the weekend feeding the agency to the...
There will, of course, be no investigation or convictions or trials having to do with these allegations of money laundering, but, you know, it's just kind of meant to poison the well against those that, you know, criticize and oppose Elon and Trump in government.
Wood chipper, even though he had to miss some fun parties. He also stood in the Oval Office and claimed that the agency spent $50 million on condoms for Gaza and promised that funding for Ebola prevention had not been cut.
My favorite one is the Gaza condoms one. Who remembers what the great punchline to that lie was? When they say that the U.S. tax dollars were going to buying condoms to be like distributed through Gaza, you might be thinking like, oh, so we're sending tens of millions of U.S. tax dollars to buying contraceptives so that people in a war zone can have protected, like, for fun sex, right? And that's something that a lot of Americans are going to hear and go like, fuck that, no. However, hilariously, as many of you in chat already know, it was not Gaza as in Palestine, it was Gaza, Mozambique, in Africa, where apparently, like, something along, like, the lines of 60% of the world's STDs come from. Unfortunately, due to the lack of medical care and whatnot, and I guess it's quite rural too, there are a lot of diseases that come from there, and so providing ways to prevent that literally makes the whole world, which, mind you, America is part of, don't forget, healthier. Something that is not the prerogative of the Trump administration, though, as we all very well know.
One of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola, Ebola prevention.
So weird that Musk is doing pressers in the Oval Office and leading cabinet meetings because the Justice Department told about 5 different federal judges that Musk is just a lowly advisor with zero actual authority.
Of course. Of course.
Anyway, the claims about condoms and Ebola were both false. The agency wasn't spending any money on condoms for Gaza, but it was spending money to contain an Ebola outbreak in Uganda, and now it's not. It's not spending money to contain HIV and AIDS. It's not vaccinating kids for polio. It's not spending $290 million to prevent severe acute malnutrition, which will result in 369,000 extra child deaths a year because the Project 2025 guys think spending a nickel a serving on peanut butter and powdered milk to feed a starving child is bad value for American taxpayers. Secretary of State Marco Rubio...
To be fair, many American taxpayers also don't want their money going to that. Most American taxpayers would rather not pay taxes at all. And if their tax money is going to anything, they don't want it to be not America. Even if that money ends up helping America in the long run, even though it's not directly spent on America, they don't care. They don't want it leaving the country. It's a very weird, well, not even weird, it's an understandable but brain-dead mindset that Americans have.
Canceled 83% of USAID contracts and fired all but a handful of its 10,000-person staff. He ordered the few remaining programs to be administered through the State Department, which is, again, not what Congress legislated when it created the agency, but Elon Musk liked it, so I guess it's okay. And while we're on the subject of the State Department, the Project 2025 wish list included defunding or terminating membership in the United Nations Human Rights Council, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, better known as UNESCO, and the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Check, check, and check. Other congressionally created foreign aid agencies Trump purported to shut down include the U.S. Institute for Peace, the Inter-American Foundation, and the U.S. African Development Foundation because, thanks to Project 2025, the president can just decide not to spend money in the federal budget. Did we mention that Project 2025 is obsessed with pronouns?
Oh,
Project
yeah.
2025 contains more than 100 mentions of gender identity, gender ideology, transgender identity, gender equity, and pronouns. Basically, they want to...
Trans people are like the marginalized, like, sexual minority that the right is focused on demonizing and making a fear-mongering narrative out of course. So they really want to feel like, they want people to feel like they're delivering on that wedge issue.
turn the clock back several decades to a time when gay people were treated like deviants and perverts, and we all pretended that trans people did not exist. Or the, quote, unscientific notion that men can become women and vice versa. They also aim to do away with government efforts to increase women's participation in the workforce. As a start, they propose to delete the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity and inclusion, DEI, gender, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health care, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights from every federal rule, agency regulation, contract grant regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. And that's exactly what happened. On his first day in office, Trump signed an executive order defending women from gender ideology and extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal.
Remember when he had himself surrounded by, like, a bunch of, like, kids? A bunch of little girls, and he's, like, signing the document, and he's like, look at them, they're so beautiful. It was the creepiest thing ever. And the more you know about Trump, the creepier it gets. It's only creepier the more context you have. And then it falls over a threshold of so creepy that you just don't want to think about it.
Federal government. He said the erasure of sex in language and policy has a corrosive impact, not just on women, but on the validity of the entire American system. And then he mandated the erasure of sex in language and policy, ordering federal agencies to remove all statements, policies, regulations, forms, communications, or other internal and external messages that promote or otherwise inculcate gender ideology. For the past 3 months, federal agencies have furiously scrubbed language relating to gender from their websites and federal regulations. They banned the pride flag and ordered government employees to remove pronouns from their email signature lines and online bios. They banned the non-binary gender marker on passports and ceased processing change of gender requests for trans Americans. The purge was so complete that the Centers for Disease Control deleted guidance that clinical trials should include both male and female test subjects, which is more than a little ironic, considering that the administration is so adamant that men and women are obviously biologically different.
We really are in a clown world. You know what's so funny about that is that clown world was a far-right meme. Popular in 2019, basically meant to... Let me give you guys a little bit of context here before we wrap up this segment. I've been doing politics for long enough that I feel like I can, give you guys a little ride back in time to an era many of you guys might not be familiar with. You see, back in 2019, the right was feeling much the same that we do now. Yes, their guy was in office, but culturally, things were clearly slipping. Dislike of Trump was really inflaming, and America was progressively declining towards not so great of a place. There were more reasons to criticize Trump with every passing day, and the right was actually getting nervous. And so the right was in this position very similar to how we feel now. And to sort of complain about this fact and to essentially exhibit their frustration with the fact that society was getting notably more progressive and loud in its progressive ideas, they started making memes calling it clown world, that we're descending into a clown world. Essentially, everything that you hear from Nazis about Western civilization falling, they basically bundled all of that together into the clown world meme. And granted, there were some instances of the clown world meme that went pretty hard, they were pretty funny, but it was a Nazi meme. Though it's very much fallen out of the common parlance these days. I don't think most of you guys even knew what I was talking about when I referenced it. Not even most Nazis remember it anymore. So I'm reclaiming it. No one even remembers it anymore. So we are living in a fucking clown world. Never has that term been more accurately used, by the way. Anyway. If you guys enjoyed this segment and found what I had to say entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way, then please consider leaving a like whether you're watching live or after the fact when this goes out on YouTube. Every thumbs up goes a long way to boost the channel and the algorithm, and consider commenting as well. In fact, comment down below, legal my eagle. Yeah, I think that's a good one. If you want me to know that you watched this far. It'll also help the channel a lot in the algorithm, and of course, you know, tells me that you liked the video enough to see it all the way to the end. And of course, subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications if you haven't already, so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos in the future. And if you want to see more from me on other platforms, my social medias are linked down below in the description as well. Especially, I recommend you join my fan Discord, which is the main hub of my community and fan base. I even host gaming events, call-in streams, watch parties, and movie nights there every Friday. This is just the end of a segment, by the way. And on top of that, I just kind of announce all my new stuff there, so even if YouTube bugs out, you'll still get to know that I'm live or uploading new videos. So it's just an extra layer to know, oh yeah, Zan is active, here's what he's doing, even if YouTube doesn't want you to know. And finally, if you want to support me directly, financially, you want to help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xander Hall merch through the Streamlabs link down below. Regardless of how you support me though, thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a good one.